Welcome to the Square Base Show, starring the wonderful Val Heffelfinger and me, Rob. In today's Type 45, you're going to see all of the information about an event that just happened, Skaven rumours, Dwarf rumours, and the destruction of Age of Sigmar.
Jazz hands for AOS getting blowed up real good.
I actually forgot what we were going to talk about as I started the intro, and I was like, Skaven rumours. There's 9 more Skaven armies coming. That's the Skaven rumour.
That's the scuttlebutt on Skaven.
On Skaven. Listen, bud, and everyone watching, thanks for tuning in. Thanks. We're going to start the show off straight off with the Honest Wargamer Square Base Patreons. Woo! You guys are talking up a storm. I tried to read through some of the bits last night. Those faction chats won't stop, and it is stressing me out now.
Oh no! Sometimes I just have to forget they exist. I just literally have to. I've dipped my toe back into general, and from there I'll branch out from general.
Okay, yes, that's sensible. Yeah, I've just uploaded some pictures from the event of the weekend in general, because is this going to sound silly? Even though it's our server, our Discord server via Patreon, I'm a little shy to post stuff. I'm like, I don't want to disturb you guys. You're all just having a nice chat. Do you know what I mean?
Excuse me, would you like these photos of this nice event I ran? The answer is yes. As you pointed out when going through Warhammer World, we are a particular kind of nerd that loves minis, and photos of minis is always a welcome thing, I think, especially when they're dynamically placed on very nice terrain that you can play on when you go to the TSN arena. How are those events selling? With the Kapachow link.
With the Kapachow. Kapachow. Yes, we do have more events now in the calendar. At the TSN Arena here in Nottingham, if you'd like to come. Some of them are selling really well. Some are nearly sold out. We have, I thought about this the other day. In 3 weeks' time, we've got a sold-out Teams event. Is it the first in the world? I've got to assume yes.
Not doubles. This is full teams?
Full teams. Teams of 4.
Wow.
6 teams of 4.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah. I think that could be the world's first teams event, which is wild. And I said that to the guys this weekend. I was like, you guys are posting some of the first results in the world. So yeah, first team event, pretty spicy. But yeah, we do have more events coming up, which is fun. And this is probably, let's just kick the show off, because I don't think we've talked about this enough yet.
Not yet.
The events are selling out incredibly well. Amazing.
Yes.
But also, based on the community article we saw the other day, the scope of the project has expanded. I'm going to say not only is Old World big, I'm going to describe it as massive.
Big. Although my Google Trends searching from last week, speaking of ADHD, would lead one to believe that not so big, but fascinating in how the Old World keyword has been performing, and how the Warhammer Fantasy keyword never went away. People literally, after the end times, it just decreased tiny bit. Warhammer Fantasy has always been there. It must be the role play. I don't know. Or maybe 6th edition nerds searching for things. I don't know. But Warhammer Fantasy, Warhammer the Old World, these things have been are alive and well on the internet. That's for sure.
Very, very popular. And so, and I had some good chats with some people this weekend. We'll talk more about the events in a moment. But yeah, more events coming up. Fun. Just did an event. Fun. There's other spicy rumors and stuff as well. And then in a few weeks, me and Val are going to start looking at the results from those 3 or 4 events, and then start to do a kind of meta-analysis, because there's been some incredibly good conversations. Just literally this morning, I was part of one with Dwarf players being like, how do we leave? All Dwarf players being like, I want to leave the corner, and all the other Dwarf players like, no, that's where we live. Stay in the corner. Anyway, have you been well?
Don't go towards the light. But dwarves. We got some real big breaking news on dwarves, of course.
Big breaking news.
Huge breaking news on dwarves.
Okay, the big breaking news is very real. Should we do it now? Do you want to do it now?
We're on the topic. Why not? Actually, I want to see if it's in the picture from way back when. But I was cruising through my Arcane journal of the orcs and goblin tribes, which is awesome.
Let's go.
Hopefully, we'll talk about in a later episode, and or through the magic of editing later in this episode. But look at this, Robbo. Look at this. I don't know if you can see that.
So I've got one prepped for everyone at home.
Oh.
I got one prepped. There you go. You can see. But I appreciate the fold out. I enjoy you spreading for me.
Oh, this is actually my terrible photo that has the lens flare right on top of the pony's sick harpoon or whatever it's got on it. That's a fully based pony and cart in the dwarf lines. And I think that's hilarious because I suspect this little mini is going to have some rules coming at us.
I want to say I called it. There is no way you're letting such an iconic miniature not have a rule set. So if you guys don't know what you're talking about, in the miner's kit, you get a dwarf and pony cart. I think this is that same kit, but it looks like it's been upgraded potentially. I don't know if it always had the thing on the front.
No, it always had the like harpoon laser beam thing on it because I remember looking. I have a baggie of these things, and I was gonna just like give them away. No, stonks are going up, guys. Load up on pony cards.
So maybe it's from
but I remember looking at it and be like, this clearly has a weapon on it. Why doesn't it have rules? And all the 6th edition folks out there are going to, as usual, get mad at me for not knowing things. But I assume maybe it had rules at some point, or maybe it had a scenario thing. I don't know. But I'm looking at the dwarf army picture from the original reveal of the old world factions. And no pony card in there. So maybe this is breaking news. Maybe I'm about to start a fire on the internet about the pony card.
I think you are. Get ready, pony cart lovers all over the world. People who take their kids to like Christmas markets where they get little pony rides in a little small wagon. You're about to be able to take that wagon to war. That's right.
Yeah,
you're about to kick off, which is huge news. Obviously, we got the Dwarf Arcane Journal on the horizon. There's lots of rumors abound. Slayer armies potentially inbound. Dwarven Throng armies potentially inbound. But breaking that we're getting the pony cart, I think, is a big deal.
I also really love that, there's some like really amazing like Highland miniatures, for example. I have some dwarf cav where I think they're on goats or ponies or something. And then GW's like, We got a pony for the dwarves, yeah. Right here. We got right here. You wanted ponies? How about a pony with a laser beam on his head? There you go. We got it.
I'm really excited about this personally, and I've decided. So it's kind of interesting when you get into other fandoms. Val, like, you're going to go play 40k at a weekend, right? Who's the weirdest? Which faction has got the weirdest little freaks in it that play? Like, which faction?
Weirdest little freaks?
Yeah, I'm not talking about just like your classic like loves fascism dudes. I'm talking about your weird little freaks. Like people you want to go.
I would never talk about a fascist with such an endearing term as weird little freak.
Okay.
No. I don't. I mean, immediately, certain Tau players spring to mind.
Okay.
But of course, I mean, orc players. But in 40k, they're more like your retired out to pasture frat guys. Now they still got the button up with the t-shirt underneath and the button up not buttoned up. They still probably have cargo shorts and flip-flops.
The classic.
But maybe they're less drunk.
Oh, I thought they'd be more drunk. It's just based on only 2 weekends worth of events, I've decided the kinky little freaks in the old world community are the dwarf players. Like
Yeah,
no one else is talking about their armies. Like every time I jump in, they're like, "Oh, the anvil," and then there's a fight, and then they're like, "Oh, sit in a corner." There's a fight, and I'm like, "What is happening? Why is it all like no one else? Everyone else, like the Bretonian players, are just off, I assume, drinking a Merlot somewhere and punching a Povo, or whatever else they're doing. Absolutely. And Tomb King players still at the British Museum on their 3rd tour, just looking around.
There's a very classic Old World Lives podcast episode where they review the Bretonian 8th edition, well, the 6th edition book, but played in 8th edition fantasy battles. And one of the guys on there gets wine drunk really hilariously because it's not the kind of pot. It literally is drinking a Merlot or something while discussing Bretonians. But by the end of it is just hammered. And they're Swedish guys too. So like the English starts to unravel a little bit. It is an endearing and hilarious little podcast because The Old World Lives is not the type of podcast you'd expect people to get wasted on. It's not an Australian podcast. It's the other kind of fantasy podcast, a Swedish podcast. So anyway, highly recommend for a good drunken Bretonian romp. Thank you for triggering that memory. It's very fond.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful moment. Well, Dwarf Pony Car on the horizon. In the comments,
Pony cart.
It let us know.
The Dwarf and Pony Show. You know what I'm saying?
If only there's some dogs. Get that dog and pony show. Yeah, in the comments, let us know what you're hoping for from the Dwarf release, because I'm assuming you weird little freaks are going to be talking to Storm up about it. Dwarfs, that's the big rumor right now. But we jumped straight in. I haven't even asked how you've been since I last seen you. Obviously,
I never ask you how you are, so that's fine.
How have you been? You've been doing any hobby? What you been up to?
This is if you ever find yourself trapped at a cocktail party and you're with people who go to cocktail parties and you leave and you realize that you didn't ask anyone else like how they were or a question about their job, you've lost the cocktail party game because you're not supposed to talk about yourself. This is probably something that you learn in preschool in Britain, but here I just get dummied all the time. So that's why I never ask you how you're doing, because I suck at this game. The answer to your question that I've already forgotten is what?
Sir, have you been involved in the hobby about which we are doing a show right now in the past week? And how was that? And if you haven't, have you been okay otherwise? That's the question.
Otherwise, doing all right. Life comes at you pretty fast, So I've been back for a week? Yeah, I guess because we did a show literally the morning I got back. So yeah, I've been back a week. I have tidied and organized my space. That was kind of like a big priority. So all my stuff is away. Because again, after you go to a GT or an event or go traveling with Warhammer stuff, wherever you come from is absolutely destroyed if you're me anyway. So everything's been organized and put away nicely. And I'm actually preparing for a game on a gentleman's channel called Eric's Hobby Workshop. Don't know if you've ever heard of him.
No way! That's amazing.
He's got a couple followers. He's a pretty dreamy looking dude. He likes to play Warhammer games on the internet these days.
He's got a great voice. Like, absolutely.
He's got a great voice. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, welcome to Eric's Hobby Workshop. In today's video, I'm going to be painting. Eric's Hobby Workshop, famously, for everyone who doesn't know, famous for several different projects, but one of the ones that I'm deeply in love with is, for Bretonian fans out there, he did the Full Tilt. Oh, and I don't want to be a nerd right now and just get out my easily, readily available Full Tilt White Dwarf magazine I have on hand.
Oh, look at that!
Look at that, right? Ready to punch stuff out.
Actually, that is a unpunched White Dwarf. Wherever that White Dwarf came from was clearly a joyless household that they didn't even get the full tilt game out of it. I was gonna say Eric's Patreon is the only one you can pay for with panties. You can just mail your panties to him, and you can. It's amazing. So I'm getting ready for that. I don't know.
Let me clip that. 10 out of 10. Thank you.
Thank you. That was just off the cuff. But yeah, so I'm going to be playing him. He's bringing vampire counts. So, which is, again, if you pay the subscription fee, you can see me play on demand on Tabletop Tactics against vampire counts with orcs and goblins. I don't know if I might just bring the exact same list because I played it so badly against Lawrence that clearly 2 times is the charm. And maybe I'll just bring a few items or something from the Arcane Journal, and that's what I'll run. Because I really like the Big Spider. The Big Spider was fun. He's not probably good, but he was fun because of all the poison.
I like that the only hobby you're getting now is either international travel or being on a very large YouTube channel. That's it. Like, don't get out of bed for less. Dickie's been trying to play a game with you for like 3 months. He's like,
oh yeah.
He's like, can I come over? I live very locally. Like, no, I'm going somewhere else to play.
God bless Dickie. When Dickie and I visit each other, it's actually like a 90-minute drive, which for just a hang, like even in Canada, that's asking a lot. So whenever Dickie comes over here, I go see him. It's an investment of time. But no, that guy, no, he's a captain of Team Canada. Sorry, he's a coach of Team Canada, head coach, in fact, for the 40K WTC. So he has turned his broad shoulders away from the old world and is deep into the 40K. He's going to play at the my favorite 40K event of all time, the Canhammer Team Tournament next weekend.
Oh, is it next week?
Yeah, it's next weekend.
Oh, that's amazing.
So a lot of my old 40K friends are going to be having a really, really good time there. And I'm trying to coax some details out of the soon-to-be organizer of the Old World event at Capital City Bloodbath in Ottawa, the crown jewel of tabletop gaming in Canada.
Shut up! Is CCBB doing
CCBB? Oh, here we go. August 24th through 25th. Not sure when we will do tickets. Awesome. Worrying about that after CHTT. Fair point, T.O. Okay, so I tried to get the scoop, but there was no scoop.
Was it Darren?
No, it's not Darren. It's actually one of the OGs, Andrew Atkins, and also my good friend Danny, who was the bewildered TO of the 6th edition event. Remember, I don't know if you remember me bullying some fantasy players.
I do.
The last time we covered CCBB.
I do.
So that was run by Danny, who is just like, who is this guy in those interviews? It's great.
If you don't know, if you are a new adventurer into the world of Square Bast and the Rob and Val show, you will not know that 2 years ago I was flown over to Canada to live stream a 40K event because I am pretty good at live streaming things, as is Val. But Val was my infield reporter, and at that point I was trying to get him to cover the quite major 40K event that we were covering, and he just refused to do so and kept finding the 8 people playing Warhammer Fantasy Battle at the time. This is 2 years ago, don't forget. So the old world just a blink in the eye of the hopeful.
It was more than 8 people. There was probably 8 tables.
Okay, 16 people.
It was at least that. It was at least 16. At least.
Okay. Oh, I apologize.
And also and then 2 years before that, I was a serious 40K player, and I was your infield reporter, and couldn't remember the name of common Drukhari units, and embarrassed myself really badly. So it was better that I just didn't even try, and I think it worked out for everyone's benefit.
I think it did work out. It was a good time. So I would be very excited to see Capital City Bloodbath because the TOs, in my opinion, are wonderful people, and it's a great community. Talking about so you're going to play on Eric's Hobby Workshop, who's a wonderful dude. And like I say, he's done an amazing video if you want to go check it out, where he built a full tilt table. Then he's also done a gameplay in full tilt. Eric, when he came over to the UK, being him as the 2 major full tilt enthusiasts in the world, went to Boyle, which is kind of an old school, old hammer event being held. It's near Nottingham, and we met the other 2 people who made a full tilt table to play. So all the full tilt community, all 4 of us were in attendance at a singular event. So pretty fun. Hopefully we can recreate it this year. Not sure. So you looking forward to playing him?
Absolutely. It was going to be great to see him. He, of course, came. His first ever event was the original Square Base GT held at the Mini Wargaming Fuck Bunker back in November. And so we got to meet each other there. And he's somewhat local, as most YouTubers who aren't you and do wargaming stuff tend to be, somewhere in Southern Ontario, which is very weird. So I'm gonna go up to where he is, and we both have sort of a window between when our kids are dropped off and when they need to be picked up, and that's about 6 hours, and hopefully we can get it all in the can in that stretch, and no one is the wiser.
Okay, well, now listen, I don't want to I'm glad you've been able to book in some hobby time and sort out your hobby space, and you are playing Orcs and Goblins at that, but I'm going to keep pushing you every week now, and I want this in the YouTube comments, I want this in the Patreon. Let's start pushing Val. Get out of his comfort zone. He needs to move past Orcs and Goblins. I want to see a new army on the table, buddy. Okay?
Bruh.
What is it?
Bruh. This is so good. It is so good.
Yeah, the Orcs and Goblins Arcane General is amazing. That is true.
It sucks how good it is, because it's really hard to to pull up stakes now and give up on them. Okay. Because there's at least 2 other. There's both of their armies of infamy look like so much fun. Probably not really the troll one. The troll one's probably fun, you get a really cool firework when you're a kid, and then you blow it up and it kind of scares you, and then you just kind of like I'm glad I did that, but also I don't want to do that again. That's kind of what I feel like Troll Horde is. But the Nomads look like fun.
Okay, I'm going to count those as new armies then. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm going to count those as new armies. All right, so not to kind of take the wind out your sails, and seeing as you're such an absolute you can only visit you behind paywalls. Apparently, I appeared on a YouTube battle report this week.
Oh, where?
Yes. Well, as you okay, so I need some context for everyone. It's a YouTube channel called Andy 2D6.
Yes.
Andy 2D6. Andy. And Andy makes incredibly old school battle reports, very much in the vein of Once Bitten, Mr. Malorian, that sort of style, which is super, super fun. And if you all know, I've obviously been working super hard on getting the venue ready, so 12 tables of terrain for the old world, organizing all the events for the old world, all of that other stuff. So I haven't necessarily had a lot of time to work on my own personal armies, especially painting, although I did do some painting this weekend. I'm nearly painted my first unit for my Warriors of Chaos army, which is fun. But I've also had a bit of a tumultuous time, just to let everyone know.
A lot of ups and downs.
I wanted to play Warriors of Chaos. Val already knows about this. You've been watching. I want to play Warriors of Chaos, but Warriors of Chaos, as in the unit, suck, in my opinion. Obviously not a statement of fact, my opinion. Then I'm like, but the Knights are cool, but guess what? Chosen Knights suck. 42 points for a wound. You crazy? I'm not part of that. Then I had a couple of great games recently. Specifically, I played against my friend Mark the Beastman. And because Beastman worked really well with MSU and lots of chariots and stuff, he's got me jonesing for that MSU fix. So I rebuilt my army, working along this theory of MSU, and then I played it on Thursday against Andy, and that's the video you can go and watch, and it worked a little treat, which was really nice. I was up against Dwarfs, and then at the weekend, we had like a few people not turn up, and I did have a spare player, so while I was running the event, me and my spare player, we had like a pretty slow game, although we still got it done in like 3.5 hours, while I was like going off and checking tables and answering rules and stuff like that. So I was able to get 2 games in this week, which in my packed schedule is pretty impressive, I would argue, and even did some painting. So I'm pretty hype about that.
Dude, and I want to just share with the world the secret hobby hack that Rob has to get minis painted. Just like any place in your home or your office space, or both, if you're in the case of Rob, who just lives where he works, you can just leave a pile of miniatures, some brushes and some paints in any place that you tend to stand for a long period of time or might just have an idle 30 seconds. And then that way, as you're like doing one of your 7 jobs, you can also be painting. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a very effective way to get hobby done, and I commend you for it.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, I had a lovely time, so I'm really enjoying. You can go watch that battle report by Andy. My minis are not painted, just 100% clarity. I started painting them over the course of the weekend. I'm very excited. I'm jonesing every day to paint them up. I just do not have the time. I'm away this weekend at a trade show with my partner who's selling all of her famous minis. So that's really exciting.
Salute,
which would be cool. But yeah, I managed to get 2 games in this week, and I've loved my list, which has been very, very cool. So
that's a really great change of pace.
Yes.
That you actually like what you're working with, because I know you were struggling. Also, listening to some friends on some podcasts out there, there's some bewilderment around Warriors of Chaos, because they seem like they should be really good. And I think you've been coming to terms with this too. Like on paper, like you read about them, you're like, geez, these guys look awesome. But they're maybe not getting the results that everyone would expect. So yeah. Also, I've been as your agent, running through the Facebook page. You have also been invited to play on Barefoot Miniatures in a battle report. So not just me, but Max Cooper of Barefoot Miniatures said they'll even bring the lights and equipment to you. Do you have any places?
Again, if they want to play against an unpainted army, then fine. like my army...
lights, equipment, and painted army, and Rob's in. All right, cool. I told them that I wouldn't bother you with it until after Salute. So there you go. You've been ambushed on air.
Okay, well that's fine. Like as long as I have all of that equipment, then cool. But can I just say the thing that I'm loving for everyone in the chat? I'm loving Chaos Ogres. That's what I'm loving. Great weapon Chaos Ogres in 3s.
Okay.
That's what I've been loving.
Yes. That's a classic move.
Yeah, and then this, who was it? I think it was Mark who put me onto this, or maybe it was you. But I need to re-understand warriors, and I've been building them as like shield, Nurgle, full plate, level 4 caster in there. Not full plate, that's chosen. That's kind of what I've been doing. And it's just like I don't kill anything. Like, my front rank's got 6 attacks. And I'm like, this sucks. So now I'm going for a much better system. It's extra hand weapon, Mark of Khorne, only 8 of them are in there. And then when the new Dark Oath minis come out, I'm going to start trying to run like 5 cav with flails. Again, Mark of Khorne, so Marauders. I think that's really exciting. So like, it's been, because it's like annoying enough to get rid of 8 warriors. Like, annoying enough, but like, it's 130 points. I don't care. So like, everything's everything's in my list is kind of 130 points. And this is the big news. I've no BSB.
Yeah. That's
pretty common now, right?
Yeah, I think it's oddly, like, it used to be if you were undead, you didn't bring a BSB, but now it's you don't bring a BSB unless you're undead. It's a weird world we're in now, an old world, if you will. But yeah, like, I think the BSB is kind of a nice to have. Bretonians obviously get it for free, but I think in most cases, I think you can kind of get away with not having one. I don't know why. It just feels maybe it's just hubris that we're all dropping BSBs from lists. But did you see a lot of them out on the tables at Squarebase 3?
Nice transition. Absolutely love that. 11 out of 10. So yeah, I ran an event this weekend, which is where I got to play a little spare player game, which is cool. Meant to be 24 people. Sold 24 tickets, but only 20 people turned up. So if you're those 4 people, thanks for the donation, I guess. Appreciate you a lot. Put that towards terrain. But yeah, we had 20 people playing, which was super cool. And then we had like a nice variety of factions. So if you listened to our show last week, where Val obviously talked about his experiences at the GT, one of the things that stood out was there wasn't many Renegade factions, which was absolutely different this time around.
I saw that.
Yeah, we had a Skaven, we had 2 Ogres, I think, we had 2 Vampire counts, which Max had to unfortunately drop on the Saturday, so then our spare player was also playing Vampire counts, so that ended up with 3. In the mix over time. Then we had a couple of Dwarfs, which was cool. We had some Tomb Kings and Bretts. Ryan came back with his Tomb Kings. We had a couple of Warriors. So it was, again, nice, diverse, even kind of spread, which I really enjoyed. Really, really fun. Again, as always, the army quality is just through the roof. Just having a wonderful time. Had a couple of people, Dan with his Orcs and Goblins, but he'd done his whole Orcs and Goblins army is round based because he plays Age of Sigmar a lot, but he's just put it on the right. He put it on the right movement trays. We had that same thing with an Ogre player on round bases, but then just put them on the right movement trays. And I think it was great to see. Honestly, I didn't see it be an issue. Everyone had a good time with it, so that was really fun.
Oh yeah, the Age of Sigmar round base thing is, generally speaking, not an issue at all. Like especially in the example of Ogres, they're on 40s in AOS and they're on 40s in Old World, so that's easy. It's just the characters that are a little hard to make backwards compatible. But if you rebase them to squares and then you put a square in the round hole, you got a stew going there. So you can make a really easy to shift back and forth Ogre's army. And you can really upset the powers that be at Games Workshop with your ambidextrous gaming techniques.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the conversations that occurred over the weekend, and I don't know what your hot take on this is, happened a couple of times, and I'll get through the results in a minute, but the Vampires won the event, which is very cool, a very cool list. We also had something I'd really like to talk about, but the very sensitive issue we'll talk about in a moment. But like Renegades armies, some people were like, don't feel they've been play tested well enough because Ogres, everyone says that they feel like Ogres might be struggle a little bit. Vampires feel like they've got some very strong mechanics. But like, it does feel like that's so early to have that conversation in an evolving meta, because everyone has said dragons will win the games. And so far we've had a Vortex kind of spam list that we saw last week, win the event, and then this week we had a leadership bomb list win the event, both of which I called, by the way. Don't want to hype ourselves up, but
is that a leadership bomb list, or is that a Mortis engine buffing and zombies? And anyway, yes, leadership is probably certainly a big part of it. But I guess he does have the Tomb Banshees for the screams. That's
so
true.
He also gets screams from because actually it gets screams I think from the Mortis engines as well.
That used to be the case. Yes. Okay.
But we'll run through the list in a moment. But
yes.
What's interesting is, you've had people turn up, try to win the events, play games. It was like really cute this weekend, like 3 or 4 people's first ever event. Shout out to Ben. I know it's his first event, who's Ryan's brother. Remember Ryan with the really kick-ass Bretonians from last week? He came again with his brother Ben.
Nice. Good.
And then this is for Old Hammer fans, which is really sweet. And then just out of nowhere, this very tall, well-dressed older gentleman turned up. And he turned up, and I was like, he said hello. He's like, hello, Rob. And I was like, God, you smell amazing. Who are you? And he was like,
By the way, if you're remotely handsome or smell good, hang out with Rob, because he's gonna make you feel good about how you look and smell. Hugo. Anyway, continuing. So we have yet another tall, charming individual rolling into the TSN.
But an older gentleman. I was like, hello. And he was like, I'm looking for Ryan and Ben. I was like, they're over there. Then afterwards he came up and I was like,
I'm Ryan and Ben.
And then he was like, he's like, hello, Rob, I'm Gary. I was like, Gary who? He's like, Gary Morley. I used to sculpt a lot of Games Workshop minis. I was like, did you do the original Nagash? And he was like, yes. And I was like, what the hell? So Gary Morley, the sculptor of the original Nagash, just turned up smelling great, absolutely amazing. Then proceeded to give me what I can only describe as just like a TMI situation, which was brilliant, where we just started talking. He's like, yeah, I can't stay for long, Rob. I've got a date. I'm 68, she's 60. And I was like, crying with laughter.
Rob in the cradle.
I was like, let's go. And then she was like, she's a goth. And I was like, the sculptor of the Nagash, the OG Nagash, Day in a Goth is the most perfect story.
Also, 60-year-old goth? Go on. Very morally, all right.
Anyway, that happened. So I just thought I'd bring that up.
That was a lovely tangent. And also, TSN Arena is awesome. I love that it is a very open and friendly gaming space to all of the various denizens and folks of Nottingham, plus folks willing to drive or take trains. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, but then
it's becoming a thing. So I dare I say, it's a bit of a vibe.
Oh, don't want it to be a vibe. I'll have to sweep up way more.
You're already sweeping and ironing linens.
Linens?
You're like you're practically boiling soup. It's you basically work for Mini Wargaming at this point. You're doing the Airbnb and 7 other jobs.
Yeah, the fuck bunker too. That's the goal. But my point was, loads of new people. Gary not new, I guess, and then
new to us,
new to me. Nice to meet you, Gary, if you're watching this. And then we had a lovely time. It was really fun. And Shane travelled over from Ireland as well, like rural Ireland, and he won Coolest Army, which I thought was absolutely lovely. He's from like literally the sticks, like no one's there. He turned up like looking just brilliant, and then he was like, I'm here to play. And it was first ever event, and I think I didn't win many games, and he just had a great time, and I was like, this is wicked. So and yeah, fun event, I think, and really exciting to see players having fun. I will say, compared to last week though, an absolute cavalcade of more questions, so many more questions.
Interesting.
This week. Yeah. It was
what do we think was generating that? Why was that? Was just different tier of player, perhaps, or was it just more complicated stuff? Or
I think a little column A, little column B. I think generally the videos that I think I could make to help the community out, so something I'll do in the future, is you're in a situation with units, and then you've got units fleeing, units charging, units breaking as well, charge reactions and when they happen. Some of it's just about ordering, which is one of those ones. I voice noted you. It's like, you read a section, it's like, oh, you don't need line of sight to cast spells. And I was like, no, you do. You do. I know you do. And then I was like, then I was like, checking the magic missile section, and they were like, oh, this is where it says I need line of sight. And I was like, right, okay. So everyone is because the book is, I think it's fair to say at this point, badly formatted. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. There's actually, I saw, and as soon as I see an output from it, there's a community project right now to straighten it out. So to make it basically rewrite it, reformat it so that it flows and is grouped more appropriately. So like not changing the rules, obviously, but basically just re-edit, like doing a copy edit so that the right rules are in the right places. Because I'm even going way back to when we did the Magic Deep Dive. I remember trying to find all of the various conditions for the different spells, and they were everywhere. Like they were just like scattershot through it. So it was a bit tricky. Another thing, obviously, I hope you were making use of it on these calls, but obviously, tow.whfb.app for all your your rules query needs. It's a incredibly well linked and backlinked version of the rules that you can access online for free, and is just really, really helpful for finding specific things really, really fast. The search function is fantastic.
I tried. I did use that where I could. I did, and again, I gave that same speech at the beginning. Like, look, I'm going to rule it the worst way possible if we end up where we end up. But then some of those situations, like that's just how it's written. That's how it works. We all got a little bit. We had a really long conversation about drilled and redress the ranks, which I thought was really healthy, but could be written out in a better format. But as a TO, I was very busy this weekend, and I was answering a lot of questions. A lot of it was just because a lot of people were new or they hadn't played many games, and they were just like, how does this interaction work, Rob? Which was, again, just a nice thing to just be a part of the conversation, right? Just be like, oh, this is that. Because I got to watch multiple random combos happen, and there was some amazing, again, like, while that, I don't want that to scare anyone off, because they were all dealt with incredibly amicably. Everyone was just saying, hey, Rob, I'd love you to help us in this conversation. Not we're disagreeing. That wasn't what was happening. I'd love you to help us in the conversation. So I went there, and then we had a big chat. There was some really great people playing, like Mark and Liam and other stuff, who also were people I could really like rely on for rules and talk about stuff. So it was I think it was just a good atmosphere. And so, I think it's a great future. But also some incredible moments. Like just dwarfs running down stone horns, I think was a moment that happened.
No. Like, the performance of the triple Stonehorn list, which I called the People's Champion list coming into the event, was not, I wouldn't say heartbreaking, but I was hoping those boys would go for a bit more of a gallop, a little bit more of a run, So getting chased down by dwarfs, that's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, but a great moment, you say?
Yeah, great moment. There was. I'm going to say this.
Some.
I'm going to say this now. I'm a huge Age of Sigmar fan, and I will continue to be so. I'm sorry if that upsets you, Old World stands, but the Old World provides
square bass, bro.
The Old World provides these incredible moments on the table, and if you turn up to the table ready to just have the wildest shit happen, then get ready, because this is the best game for that in the world, I think. Like, people were just laughing, having a great time. So, good game.
Wild shit goes down routinely. And I think that a lot of that is there are more rules, but also there's a lot more dice. And there are more, I would also say, compared to like previous versions of the game, like less awful shit happens all the time. There's a lot more outs in the game. There's not as many like you lose moments, right? Like, so like that's great, but there's some emotional highs and lows for sure.
For sure. Exactly. And really, Chaos Dwarfs game 1 lost because of 4 leadership 10 rerollable failures. Turn 1, I think it was turn 1, turn 2. This ran off the board, and the Chaos Dwarf player was like, I lose, I guess.
Shrugs.
All right, so I'm going to tell you about something that happened at the weekend, which is, I think, going to be one of those things that we got to approach straight away, and then just kind of tear the Band-Aid off. So we're going into round 4, and I put it all in our WhatsApp group for the events. We went into round 4, and we had James, who eventually wins the event, against Mark, who's a really well practiced player. Used to play 8th edition for Team England, so a good fantasy player.
Repping the Beastmen as well, really harshly. I liked it. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And they were up in this match, round 4, and most likely whoever won that, because they were the undefeated, there's one other undefeated, whoever won that was going to potentially take out the event. Get to the table at the beginning of the game. No one's killed anything yet. Get to it at the end, and no one's killed anything yet. And now this is going to be, so just for clarity, at our events we do win, loss, draw. So, so whoever wins the most games will win the event. So a draw probably won't win you the event in some cases, although in this case it did.
But it wouldn't lose you the event either, now would it, Robbo?
No, it wouldn't. So there's some really important things to talk about with this, because I see this as a huge positive and not a negative. But some people are going to describe it and discuss it as a negative, which I don't. I would like to try and nip in the butt before I go any further.
Are you referring directly to me?
No, well, okay, I don't know what your opinion is yet, so I'm really excited to hear what your opinion is. Can I at least give the framework for what happened, and then you can give me what you think, because I think that would be cool.
Sure.
So what happened is both players, who, as I've said, are seasoned, experienced players, got to the tabletop, and then if you go back and watch my video, the very first thing we did before the game launched, I said, learning how to win games at the old world is going to be a learning experience for everybody. And in this situation, two seasoned players Mark was like, if I go in, I probably am not going to win the game. However, James was like, if I go in, I'm going to have I'm going to potentially have it so that my level 4 is going to get Vile-tided off the board. And this was a real problem. So the issue is if the general got near Vile-tide, and if anyone knows how Vile-tide works, especially with the reroll wounds guy, you would end up with your army crumbling, and therefore you die. So both players felt like that they couldn't push, and if they did, they would be in a losing position. So they both kept trying, though. You know, when you're like measuring charge ranges and you're moving, that became like a whole conversation. And then when they eventually got there, they were like, it's not going to happen. Both players were quite rightly kind of like miffed, I think is the right way to describe it. Neither player were really happy with the outcome, but they felt like there was no other option in the game, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was no path to victory. I had a really interesting conversation with Ewan, who's running his Chaos Dwarfs. He's running 2 of the big Iron Demons, a bunch of blunderbusses, and he keeps sitting in a corner. He was like, no one could defeat me in the corner, Rob. I was like, Ewan, if I played you, I just would sit in my corner and never play you. And he's like, oh, that would be rubbish. I'm like, yeah.
Is that an option?
Yeah, but
you can't do that.
Yeah, but you've already decided. You've been like, I've created the perfect castle. And I'm like, well, I would never charge the castle then, because that would be silly. You know, anyway. That's
reminds me of when I played soccer as a 6-year-old, and I was actually pretty good at soccer, football in your language. And the best goalie in the league was actually called Luigi, and he was a little Italian kid. I shot the ball above his head, above him, and he got mad at me because I shot the ball too high and he couldn't stop it. So that feels like a dwarf being mad that you would just not actually engage with him. So my thinking on this is, and this is actually why I was rolling my eyes a bit, because I did, first of all, Rob and I called it, because Chad has noted we've been bragging a lot this show, but when we looked at the lists arrayed for the event, the Vampire Council list was standing out, and as was Mark's, and a couple of the other ones. One of the High Elf lists looked really good, and I mean Rob knows the players, but I could only see the lists. And so I was not surprised at all to see that Mark and who was running the Vampire Counts? James
Ramsey, yeah, a former 40k player.
So I was not surprised at all to see them sort of in that undefeated tier. And I wonder, Robert, if this would have been different had they steamrolled 2 more other people in round 4 and found themselves in round 5 needing a W to actually win the event, whether or not they may have found a way to engage with one another.
Yeah. You made a good point, because you messaged me in the morning like you should change their pairings so that they play in the final, which is kind of like a numbers based situation. You know, if you have 32 players and everyone plays, eventually round 5, you would end up with 2 players who were playing for the win. I will argue, though, because Ewan is my other example of this. This is really important. If you design an army that can sit in a corner really effectively, like Ewan's Chaos Dwarf list, and it's like, whatever you do, I'm going to take off more points than you could take off me, I'll win the game, as an example, then it behoves me to not engage with you in that format. There's, which is exactly why you go back and watch that video about how to win on Square Based. You'll see I'm like, everyone is going to define the way that they play and win games, and some people are going to do it by just full sending everything. And if you're smart, you could just sit in a corner, but it's not engaging. That's your choice. Neither of these two players had those sorts of lists. James's list was like 1 billion zombies and a load of other stuff, and Mark's was loads of chariots, but they couldn't engage without potentially losing too much. And that risk management and risk reward is how you're going to play the game. And it's going to happen to people in the future, and you need to be conscious of it, because I don't see it as a negative. Maybe it's not brave, but it's not a negative.
I mean, I don't want to be too cynical, but I'm going to be too cynical, and I'm just going to say I think these guys probably thought to themselves, the only person I can lose to, I'm playing in this game. And what is something is the better something of valor. Essentially, running away in that particular situation maybe just gave them both the best odds to winning in the end.
I think that's incredibly unfair. No, and someone else in the chat, I would like to be really vehement in making sure that no one who watches this video or listens to this podcast goes away and thinks that there weren't two players who were trying to bait each other out, drag the units in the right place, control the board state. They played for the full time to the final round to attempt to get points off each other. They just didn't. It was never just like, we agree, we sit in a line. That's not what happened. They were both moving every unit, every turn, trying to cast spells. I just want to be super, because I don't want people to think that people were just sitting, because that's really. And I do want to say that I am being an asshole from the internet right now. And having met Mark, I can only assume that he was trying to win for sure. But I do wonder, if it's round 5. That's different.
Not round 4.
Yeah, I agree.
Then discretion is not the better half of valor, and then suddenly rolling the dice matters, because you don't know what's happening on table 2, and there might be someone there who, if they get the win, they're going to pass you, because they already have a draw. You know what I mean? So that is kind of the situation I'm talking about. So, and specifically, I think this is just unique. TSN again, or the Kickstarter is coming. But TSN right now fits 22 tables. 22 players, 11 tables, which means that in a 5-round event, the winner's not necessarily going to be undefeated. So, because the last 2 undefeated people will pair in round 4, and so therefore it might be something that you could look at for future events, where if there are 2 undefeateds in round 4 that they don't get paired yet, you give them another round to see what happens. And that could help smooth something like this out, because I do think that under different meta tournaments, different meta tournament situation, their calculus may have been different. Someone may have detected that I got to send it because a draw is not going to win me this thing, and a draw for the other guy might not win them the thing either. You could have a thing where the top players just knock each other out if someone doesn't go for the W. Which happens all the time. So yeah, I think maybe in events where you don't have you don't have enough players to get two undefeateds at the top table in the final round, maybe think about massaging those pairings for in round 4.
I want to say also that I thought it was super cool. Some people are going to really dislike that my opinion on this is that it's super cool, but I'm going to try and be really cautious about how I say this. I really appreciate and love the people that just want a full send for 5 games and go home. I think you're wonderful people and you have the best time, right? That's great, okay? But what I saw was an acumen of skill in a battle.
Yes.
What's great about the old world is that it is not some kid bingo, whack-a-mole, some sort of everything needs to stand on objectives game system. Instead, it's a game that's trying to simulate some sort of war. And in a war, you just wouldn't send your boys in full tilt. And I know loads of you love doing that, and that's wonderful, but this was understanding a game state and then making decisions based on the game state, which is actually a really fun thing to do.
So I remember, as an analogy here, first of all, even if both players ascertain that their best chance to win, even if what I was saying, the worst case scenario, which is me imposing I know nothing, I wasn't there, I didn't see them trying to win this game on the table. If I just looked at it from afar and said they did decide that the best outcome was a draw because trying to go for the win was too much risk, then that is the right call in that particular event or tournament. If that actually did improve their odds to win, which by the way it did, spoilers, James does go on to win, and Mark goes down in round 5. Then that is the correct sort of meta tournament call. I think back in the day too, you'd see before they started doing random pairings within win brackets in 40K events, you would have people submarining, basically very much massaging their scores, so that way they would be the lowest end of the winning bracket to try and get better, more favorable matchups as far as they possibly could. Manny Chima was famous for this. People would get really upset about that. But to me, it was a formatting issue, right? It wasn't the player's fault for doing that.
I agree.
If that was the best way for the player to, they thought, get to the end, then hell yeah, they found a way to get to the end. That's what mattered. It was totally within the bounds of the game, usually, I assume. There's things that can push that on the edges. I don't want to say in the exact example I gave that it was always above board. I don't know. But I do know in principle, if it's within the bounds of the format and the rules, then it's fair game. And that includes trying to ensure better matchups for yourself or whatever. So as a TO, you can just look to see if there's something that you can do to improve that format going forward.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I just think that all of those things that are being discussed around this are asinine. When I was there at the table, not from you, because everything you brought up is stuff that has happened in the past in other places, but I was there at the table. I watched 2 people try to win a game, but the entire time say to themselves, this probably isn't good. Are you going to go in? No. Well, I'm not going in. 5 turns, and they were but they were trying. Yeah. They were trying to make it
a very deadly game of hopscotch.
Yeah, they were trying. And anyway, I think I'm going to read through the comments and be super annoyed by the comments. But I felt it needed to be brought up because in the future you're going to see people understand that game state, and if you do build yourself an unkillable corner army, I'm not going to fight you. So be conscious of that when you're building your list.
And that brings me to
go for it.
Something you when we were first working on my first Orc and Goblin list, your question was why would I come towards you, right? What is the thing that's bringing me to confront your army? And I think that's why you believe heavily in having at that time war machines and things like that. So when we look at something like Ewan's list, he can castle and make you come at him because he's going to be punking you with chip damage. He's going to be hitting you with the Earth Shaker thing. He has that way to reach out and touch you and make it so you can't just sit there because you're going to be taking damage and you will lose if you just sit there. So that's something that is factored into army list design and stuff like that. What is drawing them towards you if you are going to castle up and you want them to come and take and fight you on your terms? And it is, looking at the 2 lists. And by the way, I'll make sure to put in
the notes
in the description this week the actual link to the notes to the lists on Best Coast pairings. And so that way folks can check them out. But in both certainly in the case of the undead list, it is an army that could be quite impervious to getting touched because of the massive screen of zombies it's going to have, the fact that it can res like crazy, all of the blood knights it has. So yeah, it's a really this archetype with multiple mortis engines, blood knights, and a whole lot of zombies. I think this is kind of where you're going to see sort of the meta vampire counts list going.
Can I quickly tell you kind of the trick to the list, just for everyone at home in case they weren't sure? So James's list is up here now. Level 4 wizard on a mortis engine.
We want to talk about it's a very interesting list.
Yeah. Another level 4 on a mortis engine. Then 2 tomb banshees, which are really the secret sauce. Those 90-point models are nuts. If you don't know, the trick to this list is that you get the necromantic spell, which reduces bravery down, doesn't let you use your general's inspiring in your leadership bubble. Then there's another spell which lowers your leadership by 2. In addition to that, the Tomb Banshees are the key secret, but like I say, it's the leadership debuffs that really power it. Necromancy Vortex, sorry. then leadership -2 leadership bubble, which all comes from spellcasting. That's the kind of important bit here. Vortex from spellcasting.
Yep.
The -2 leadership bubble from spellcasting, and then the banshees basically do a scream. You roll 2d6. You roll above your leadership. Well, you roll 2d6. Anything that goes above your leadership, you take a wound with no armor saves allowed. I'm pretty certain.
Super gnarly and can usually be done into combat.
Exactly. And all of that was being generated by the power of the casting. Like in some cases, cause I played against a similar list in my practice game on Saturday, and I just rolled really badly twice and just lost loads of warriors. But obviously when you're lowering the leadership, you're making that happen, which is really thematic as well. Like their leadership is super low, and you just screaming people away from the table, which I loved. I think that was really fun. And then the other kind of trick to the army, I guess, is that the Blood Knights, he could res, I think, up to 4 Blood Knights back per turn, or each one of his player turns. So, and obviously they're really tough to get rid of as well. They got full plate, barding. So a unit of knights that you can bring 4 back a turn is wild.
So those who don't know about something, it'll be interesting to see if they actually if they do address this. There's 2 big things that are kind of exploitable in vampire accounts. One is that when you're rezzing units, it's and especially I think when it's heavy cavalry, there's certain units that get this benefit. It's basically your wizard level +1 is what it comes back as. So that's up to 5 of these guys back every turn. So as long as the unit's not wiped, like you essentially get this unit back, which is amazing when you consider that they are, the vampire count equivalent to Chosen. Chosen ain't coming back when they go away.
No.
So that's really good. The other thing you see in this list too is the double Mortis engine, and you're going to see, I think, between 2 and 3 of these things a lot of the time in vampire counts lists because they have stacking bubbles as written right now, which includes +1 modifier to movement and initiative for everyone within command range. Mm-hmm. And then the blasphemous tome, which is, I think, just part of it now, is a +1 modifier to any casting roll within the command range. However, it does make miscasts a little more gnarly.
Yeah, you miscast twice.
Yeah, you miscast twice. Just slightly more gnarly. But something that's really tough. So toughness 5 with lots of wounds, which is what you're going to be when you're hanging out on the on a Mortis engine. Probably can tank a lot of those miscasts pretty effectively. So with 2 Mortis engines sort of being within each other's command ranges, you're getting +2 to cast on your really critical spells that Rob was mentioning that are going to get those leadership debuffs. Those zombies, I do believe, can be brought up beyond their starting size.
100%.
So you're basically getting a lot of stacking rules here that make it hard to get to the if you want to wall someone out, if you want to zone somebody out with a list like this, it's very hard to get at the meat of it behind that big wall of zombies. They even brought crypt ghouls, so stuff that could even hurt you, not just tar pit you. It's a really interesting archetype, very strong, and I think we're going to see a lot of this until we decide whether or not it's cool.
Yeah, I quite like the fact that it's nearly 1,000 points of wizard buffing 2 tomb banshees. I love that. That's super fun. 2 90 point, because they're easy to get rid of. They're 2 wounds. So if you've got the right spells, the right abilities to do so, that's quite fun. And it's also fairly slow as well. It's a big static castle. It's a gunline castle that moves into the midboard, but slowly. And I did talk about this as well with you a few weeks ago, and I've been constantly saying, it's quite tough to have enough wounds. This is a nice operation difference to the dragon. Liam did really well at the event as well with his high elves in second place, which was fun. And he obviously has that high elf dragon that's just absolutely killer. What I love about that list is that you bring your great weapon attacks and your monster killer and all of the other stuff to get rid of a dragon. And someone's like, cool, here's 40 zombies. You're like, oh no. I do not have that many. I don't even have that many attacks, but they do crumble though. So that's important.
Not gonna lie, what kills a dragon real fast is a debuffed leadership and getting screamed at.
Yeah.
That's gonna hurt them real quick. This is a really, really good tournament list. This is a tough hang on league night on club night, maybe.
Yeah.
But this is a very good tournament list, I think. Yeah, and there's probably even more optimized versions of this that you can lean into, or different ways that you can go with it. And I think this is a perfectly acceptable one and really nice.
I spoke to James, and he said he would. He has a unit of ghouls in there as well. He said he'd take more ghouls than
ghouls.
He said he'd take more ghouls. He said he loved the ghouls, which I think is interesting. The other thing is, I saw in one game against the triple Stonehorn, 2 Stonehorns taken off in one shooting phase from fully alive to dead via screams, which is again wild. So really interesting list, and I talked about this a little bit in the WhatsApp chats as well. I feel like level 4, and you and me had this conversation literally last week. Level 4 mandatory, but anti-magic, and I'm not talking about magic resistance. I'm talking about items that can shut down enemy spells, or and like is gotta be kind of like your go-to item at the minute, because I think that's what really pushes this over. It's all the spell casting in addition. So you need to be able to shut down enemy spells as aggressively as you can, because that feels very strong at the moment.
Yes, 100%. If you're letting your opponent engage with magic as they wish to or as they want to, it's gonna feel very frustrating, and it's going to probably result in a big old L. So yeah, you need really magic. Magic having an answer for toughness 6. So obviously this list answers both those questions. They. Those are 2 things that are kind of essential for going into sort of a playing with strangers or random opponent situation. You just need to be ready to play for those things, and there's different ways to solve for them in the various armies.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm straight up now, no BSB, 2 level 4s, and I'm also bringing in my warriors list. I'm bringing the puppet, so that you're casting the 3 dice, dropping taking the 2 lowest, which created in the vampire game I played against a similar list with a bunch of screams. Just played Rebecca, and she just kept miscasting, not getting spells off, and then the list effectiveness just dropped massively. That's something to be conscious of.
I mean, also something conscious of, like, in the particular list that we're talking about, they don't need, like, yes, the screams are very effective and they're good, but this player has a backup in the form of lots of ghouls and those blood knights to go deal damage in other ways. It's not a one-trick pony list. Like, this list has redundancy if for some reason they're getting stymied by. Maybe they're rolling up a lot of miscasts. Like maybe they're just getting punked by dispels and whatnot. There are ways for this list to deal with that.
100%. Anyway, but overall, shout out to James. Great list. Really inspiring to see something like people's faces when just like entire units were taken off by the screams was wild to see. I loved that. Liam had a great run with his high elves. Shout out to Sid as well. Sid was playing James in the final game. And I'm not sure if he ever put that pressure on, but Sid was in like a winning position, ended up in 6th, but ended up in a winning position with his Beastmen as well, which I think was cute. Ewan only dropped the one game where, as I said, 4 11 or 12, 4 leadership fails of re-rolls of 11 or 12, leadership 10 re-rolls, running his Chaos Dwarfs off the board is interesting. I was like, why do people get running at you? He's, I don't know, but he's just such a charming guy. You want to run at him. You want to go engage with him on the board. So had some great games. So yeah, good weekend all overall, and I didn't see a sour face over the weekend. So
no, the vibe check is awesome at TSN. And also, I want to shout out here, and actually as a TO, going to ask you a question, pal.
Yes, bud.
You made some tweaks to the way you're scoring your point differential. For those people who are maybe looking at Best Coast Pairings scores for the first time, you're going to see you're going to see the person's name, the faction they're playing, and you're going to see a series of numbers. The green ones are wins, the blue ones are draws, and the red ones are losses. But it's not necessarily the score that you would expect. You're going to see like 15. We're looking at James Ramsey's score. He's here: 15, 19, 17, 10, 16. So what does that mean? Why is that? And what did you do differently this time.
So thank you so much for bringing that up because I forgot about it. Yes, so shout out to Toby from last week. Toby played at the event. Toby, love Toby. Toby helped me with the kind of math on Monday or Sunday night, actually. He couldn't wait to do it when he got home. Basically, what happens is when you win a match, so we would run win, loss, draw. So if you win 5 games at an event, you win the event, like if you're the only person. However, you need a second thing and sometimes maybe a third thing, which is, and then what we do is a differential. It's really famous in team events, but effectively it's how much you beat your opponent by. One of the things that I adore about differential is that it really helps you when you lose. Because if you lose, that's like, I lost. But if you lost 11-9, that means you just barely lost.
Yeah.
Right? Because you got 9 points, they got 11 points. And that to me has always been like just a stunning way of doing it because it gives people a little bit more confidence and it gives you a better way. So last week, what we did was made it so that you had to beat someone by 100 points, and then for it to be a win, and then for every 100 points you beat them by, then you would change that number from 11-9 to 12-8. However, this week we changed it to 200 points because last week Toby pointed out that under the old system we had 62% of our matches ended up as a 20-0, which is way too high.
So good for my self-esteem, though.
Yeah, good for your self-esteem, definitely. So then this week we changed it to 200, and then I'm waiting for Toby to get back to me with some of that data, but I'm almost certain we've seen, like there are very few 20-0s now, and you ended up with a lot closer matches, and then you can see how well someone did. So, for instance, James, other than playing Mark, he got some pretty aggressively high wins, which means he killed a lot of stuff, which is a good thing. And so, and then you could kind of see how the armies work. Like, for instance, Sid, with his Beastmen, he got a draw, then he got a 14, and an 11, and 11, and then a loss. So those are very close wins where he just kind of like brought them through. And that gives you, again, some sort of indication about how a list plays. You know, the swing factor on those lists and other stuff is good informational data. But if you are playing at home with your friends, I'm going to put something up on this Wargame website today or tomorrow, and I'll try and include it in the links to this video. We'll put that chart up so people can use it. But just use that with your pals, because losing against your friend sucks. Losing against your friend 12-8 is great. You're like, I got 8 points.
Good.
Yeah, really good.
I think like I said, my favorite game when I played, I guess 2 weeks ago now, was like a hard-fought loss against one of the Triple Crown guys. And I think, I came out with 6 points or something like that. But like, I hustled for those 6 points. Like, it felt really good. Like, I came out of that feeling like I got something out of it because I was able to scramble and get some points for myself, and ultimately finished 7th, alas. But like it was great. Like, it was a really great game, and I think points differential really makes that feel consequential, because like if you think about it too, like in that game, I probably, I don't know, it would have looked a lot more lopsided if it was just like straight counting the points. And I don't think it would have represented the game as well. So I really like it. And I do feel like having the 200-point differential here is making those 20, like a 20-0 in the way that you have it set up now is essentially, you wipe out your opponent and your opponent doesn't do any damage to you, which does happen sometimes. But it's like, it's a very hard win to get. And so that means that for your opponent, anything that they're doing, they're actually getting some differential for. And so I feel like that's a good place to set it at the 2,000-point level.
The other conversation to have, but not now, but maybe in the future, and you and me are definitely going to do this as a video, and we'll chat through it when we get the data, is how much a win should be. Now, that's really spicy. At the moment, the rulebook says 100 points, and that feels fine right now. Like that's not that much of a difference. But, looking at the average unit cost, looking at those certain things, it's turn 6, the game is incredibly close, but just because in the final turn you fireballed one unit and it just picked you up the 100 points, it's pretty slim. So, that variance, and there were quite a few draws anyway, so I feel like you would end up with a lot more draws. There's already quite a few draws in this list, so even that 100-point variance, I'm going to have to go through that data, but because we've got another event in 2 weeks, 2 weeks, we can go back and we can retroactively apply varying the win difference, and then we can see what that looks like, which will be interesting.
I can't believe that these words are going to leave my lips. But
ready,
because you don't have basically enough like enough players to get that sort of top table undefeated, perhaps scoring by victory points instead of win-loss first might be the right way.
Well, so I talked to the Triple Crown guys last week, and I think what's fun in the future is you can change how the primary is scored, because dwarfs probably are always going to really struggle to get a big win, whereas aggressive double dragon lists and stuff like that will always be able to get big wins, maybe also big losses, but big wins. So what's really fun in the future, because obviously I would love there to be loads of different formats for how you play the old world, and then just saying we're doing it so however much the differential, so now you'll get more killy lists, people will do more fighting. We love fighting, so that's another way of reorganizing how people do that by. And I think that's a great shout. I think there's another option to do that at different events as well.
Because if looking at the meta of square-based GTs, like right now, the thought in like someone designing a list for these events should have is, I need 11 points. I need 11 points every single round. That's all I need. I just need to not die and get the fireball off in turn 6. That's like that's essentially how you could dial up and win this event. Obviously, that's a pretty basic B way of looking at it. But seriously, like a points denial list that just scores a little bit could win you this event on point on just the win-loss. And so like until we're able to have that sort of like that Titanic matchup at the end, or you could change how pairings work. But like I think that maybe just going to aggregate battle points might be the way, and maybe that's why Europe scored it this way for a long time, where it was just aggregate. My
only pushback on that is I feel that encourages more 10-10 sits, because that's 50 points. That's not bad. And a draw. You're right though. I think we could relook at it, but it's still early days. These are all learning things, which is really fun.
We're just spitballing here.
Yes.
We're just spitballing here. I think fundamentally the tweak that you did make based on your data and what you heard, what you saw, booyah. And I think it's a really cool idea to now go back and reverse engineer it. How do pairings change if you were to have done it this way? Or how does the result change if if it was just, pure victory points or whatever? So like a loss, but a high loss is worth something. Like if you have a 9-point loss right now and you have more victory points than the person who got 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, you're going to lose to them in the standings at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
someone in the chat has pointed out, and I think this might come up in the comments, so I'm just going to reply to it. Offense-orientated play should be rewarded. That is actually completely untrue. Like, that's your opinion and how you feel. Like I say, there's loads of people who are like, I just love running forward. Yeah, there's like loads of people like, why would you have defensive strats like, reroll 6s to hit, reroll saves? Why would you have defensive strats if defensive playstyles weren't also something people enjoyed doing? Because that's how, what's a pike wall? Like a square back in the day. We're playing a war game. So I think like being able to bring in as many playstyles as possible is healthy, I would argue.
Yeah, I would just say that like in a kill points game, I think, and if we let this meta continue to play out and you get repeat players and people are like, it starts to be more like, I want to win the tournament. I think we're going to start thinking more about points now. Right now, we think a lot about damage. It's always the number one thing that we go to. Like, what's the better defense, offense or actual defense? And I think actual defense has a lot of legs, especially when you're playing in win-loss. And this is an ancient debate in Warhammer, and ways to do Warhammer, whether you do aggregate victory points to do your placings, or if you do win-loss draw. So a win is a win. A win is a win is awesome, I think, if you have enough players and rounds. But in a case where you may not, and then aggregate score might make things a little more spicy because the incentive is to score more, and that would reward offense. Whereas I think this particular thing would reward more cautious play. So I don't know. I think it's a really cool, and I don't think there is a right answer. And I think you're right, Rob. There is nothing wrong with somebody who built a list to go 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, if it works.
Yeah, if it works, because the other guy's the other guy doesn't want you to go 11-11.
Right. So that is a means of skill. That is a way of judging a meta and making a strategy and seeing it through. If you think that's boring, well, fine. Find a way to make it so that strategy doesn't work. But yeah, I think it's I think it's a cool conversation, and we'll see how the rest. How many more SBGTs are live? So we have a team event. Are there any more singles events, or are we through the singles?
So my list is next week. I got a Salute this weekend. Next weekend, an Age of Sigmar GT. We got an Age of Sigmar GT. Weekend after that, it's another singles event, and then after that, it's a teams event. So
okay, so I guess after that third singles event, maybe we do like a big, like legit deep dive into like best lists. You know what we saw. What like actual data off of that, because that's 180 games or so.
It's a lot.
I think.
Yeah.
So like it's gonna be really cool. So we can look forward to that.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And I know for people who are like, just talk about our favorite units and their ginger hair or whatever it might be. Like, but this is still an element of what me and Val definitely are like as people and what the show will be about. We need to go through our deep dives on the new books and even the books that are there. In fact, these events will give us that context more than anything, which I think is super healthy. Because so far the big ticket item here is 2 GTs, no dragon wins.
Yeah, absolutely. And
3 GTs if we include the Swedish event, of course.
Yep, absolutely. And all of them have means of dealing with those big toughness 6 walls, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that those dragons weren't flapping around and like in position. Mm-hmm. But when you are the biggest question in the meta, like people will come with answers, right? So that's again like people get mad at tournament play and stuff. But this is the fun part of the game. Like the meta game is the fun part, because now like maybe now based on like the results of the first 2 events and other events taking place all around the world as time goes on, people will react to how people are adjusting to that anticipated, magic dominated. I think magic is probably the real dominant element of the meta, full stop. And then, followed by that T6 question. We still haven't even seen the troll horde question mark, because that's going to be a real durable, nasty list that people are going to be able to start running. And also the very obvious versions of those lists, of the troll horde list, which is, like take 3 units of 6 trolls and then, add some hags to taste. Princesses, I apologize, Scorbast. Like there's going to be all kinds of cool innovation. People are going to keep finding neat things to do. They're going to start FAQing stuff. Maybe we'll even see some balance decisions made in the game. Like this is a really vibrant, interesting game that every faction is currently battling in. And the longer we get more results and data, if they choose, for example, on legacy armies to not ever, touch them, I'm really excited, looking forward to how do we handicap that. So a reason, for example, that I think we should stay at 2,000 points is that it allows us to then handicap lists by giving them more than 2,000 points. Like baseline is 2,000. And if we're discovering that dark elves are terrible because they're overpointed, we can adjust that by giving them 2,100 points. We can do things like that as a community, and like I'm already seeing like just a really engaged group of organizers out there, people like Rob and others all over the place, trying to think about in the future, how do we keep this an exciting game to be participating and playing in, and that is sweet. So kudos to you, Rob. I really love what you're doing.
Oh, and all the other TOs as well. Like Rob, my stats partner Rob in the chat is saying we have 6 other GTs happening in April as well. So we'll try. Nice. And he's going to try and put all that data together for us in stats. I've unfortunately seen some stats being shared from like 1-day events, which is I've just been like,
not unfortunate. So I will say this. I think so. There's Wohammer.com has been trying to take on some of the we got some shaking heads. Anyway, just saying, they have been where you're seeing that screen grab come from a lot of the time. That's where a lot of the data is coming. And yes, they are using 1-day events, but they are outside of the screen grab, preambling it very heavily to say that a lot of this data is not going to be great. But really any gaming data is what we've got to work with. And as we get a better total data set of GT level events, because also GT events, people come to play in. That's the other thing. Like an RTT, it's going to be what folks have. People get ready for GTs. They build a list they think is good, and they bring it, right? So I think that's the best data. The more of those we have, the more we'll actually understand the meta.
100%. Yeah, anyway, really good. There's some really fun stuff. One thing I am going to do as well is I'm going to lift the restriction on Mercenaries, which you called back in the day. Congrats. So yeah, just going to let Mercenaries play, because I think a lot more of them new Arcane journals are going to let Mercenaries play out, and I want people to be able to run their silly old-looking ogres or whatever else it is they want to play. And I'm super excited about seeing that as well. So yeah, fun experiences at the event, and I would like everyone to also know, based on even all the serious chat about data and wins and all that other stuff, all I saw was people having engaging games of Warhammer.
100%.
So that needs to be a key takeaway that we keep talking about.
I would love to jump and just say something. I think on Sunday, so actually I called out a certain mountainous content creator on one of his episodes, one of his Talkin' Paints. Basically, it was a title that was a little derisive, I think, of the state of Old World, and I called him out. And one of the things I really want to talk to him about is, I think a lot of people are hyper focusing right now on some of these rules interactions, which you mentioned. There were a lot of questions, right? There were a lot of questions in this event. Some of them have clear cut answers in the book. Some of them have answers in the book that require extensive knowledge of where all the weird shit is in the book. Some of them are unanswerable. And so I think the internet really has had dived, basically if you are unable to play all the time, and if you're unable to if you're still working on your army list, what do you have to think about? All you've got to think about is, how do the rules work? And the truth of the matter is, right now, the more I've played Old World, the worse it has gotten from a tightness perspective. It has got you find all of those weird wrinkles and edge cases. And so I think a lot of people are getting really focused on the idea that, you're going to come to the table and your opponent's going to have a different interpretation than you, and he's going to be trying to screw you over with the gotcha, and that they're going to be, gunning for you, and everything's going to be confrontational, and you can't, no one's ever going to be able to agree. Whereas that is the paranoid fever dream of I think people who maybe they just need to get out to, I'd say, try and find a 2-dayer, get out to it, have a great time. If you do run into those situations, lean on your TO and let the TO come over and make a ruling. Just like in sports, sometimes it's an offside, sometimes it's not an offside. You just got to roll with how the ball bounces sometimes. And I think we can if folks just get away from their imagine meta and go out and actually go into the meta of people and individuals who are just so excited to be playing this, Rob. I think that's really the vibe, is people have missed playing a game like Warhammer Fantasy Battles so much, and now they're just diving in head first. And so the folks who are getting out there, I think, for the large part, want to have a good time, and they understand, just like you do, that there's some gray areas, and you figure it out with either between yourselves or with the TO. And I think that's awesome. So I just really want to encourage people, it's important that we have the conversations about rules. I do not discredit that at all. I think it's really important that we get this as figured out as possible before the games play, but don't let that be an obstacle to actually playing and engaging with the game.
Oh, if you do, you're missing out on what I saw this weekend, which is just people having a great time, and that's your loss. And all these other people who are naysaying and shouting stuff on the internet, which they were doing, I'd like everyone to know, as me and Val started Square Base a year before this game even came out, this will never be a thing, right?
Yes.
Same group of people, we were this is going to be massive, and now the scope has expanded. So each one of those YouTube videos, each one of those creators, each one of those thumbnails, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. We do. I'm not really one for bigging this up too much, but the game is great. The game is great. People are having a great time, and that's got very little to do with me and Val. It's got everything to do with those people. Those people that turned up this weekend. Everyone was like, "I have had a great time. Thanks for the event." I was like, "You'd have the same experience at another event." Honestly, everyone here is what makes it fun. They're having a good time. So I mean. So it's the community, and they're all out there having a good time. You should join in, because they're just a great barrel of laughs. And if you're not doing it, you're just missing out for yourself, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's the secret sauce. Anyway, go on.
And I want to follow up on this too. There is always an opportunity. So, for example, if your local scene is getting cancerous and a little cantankerous and argumentative, show leadership. You always have an opportunity. Rob has, I think, I think one privilege that Rob does have, being in Nottingham, is like a big pool of super engaged, experienced gamers that like can handle themselves well with the right attitude. Obviously, you've also been online for a long time. People know, your values and how to comport themselves. Like, you've established a culture where you are. If that work of being very clear about like how games should be played and how we approach how we hold ourselves when we're dealing with others doesn't exist where you are, it's an opportunity to show leadership in your communities, to get people to chill out, to find ways to constructively resolve their disputes if they do exist, especially from TOs and also players on the ground. They're like, even if people are getting worked up about things, like, de-escalation is a thing. Talking things out is a real thing. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Realize that if you ask a few more questions about why someone thinks something, often you'll find out what the actual bugaboo is behind their words. So, like, everything we can do to make this a welcoming, open, awesome old world, I think is great. I think that's one thing that Rob and I have going for us on this show. Why people have seemed to have liked it is because we genuinely believe in the power of socializing and meeting friends and playing this game out there in the real world. And to do that, sometimes you do have to find ways to get people to get along. And so I encourage you guys to out there be the bigger person, find ways to solve these issues, encourage people to play. Because I think this game has tremendous legs, except for the dwarves.
They are small.
Very short legs. Even their horses. That
so
pony
small.
cart, man.
They're so small. There was also like a dwarf. At one point, there was a dwarf versus high elf match and a dwarf versus high elf match, and I was like, "The War of the Beard is here, lads!"
Yes!
And I kept like giving them both updates. I was like, "By the way, the high elves are winning on the other table." Like, oh my god! Like, it's good. So I really enjoyed that as well. Anyway, if you watch the video and you watch this back, thanks very much. Leave comments, like, subscribe. That would be super cool as well. We'll try to include links to everything that we talked about in this show. Me and Val also owe you all an Orc and Goblin Arcane journal review.
Sure do.
There's a bunch of content we owe you all. We're going to get to it as soon as possible. We're going to put pictures up, and I'll try to include those and do some community posts when I get all the pictures up from the weekend, because I didn't shout out like James Ramsey. James, who won the event, also had a kick-ass, absolutely kick-ass,
so
cool. His own 3D printed Mortis engine versus like another one, which was super cool.
Oh, is that entirely? Oh, wow! I thought that was a kit bash, but you're right. I wonder where that's from.
The whole thing is 3D printed, which is fun, and there was two of them, and it had like that kind of fun hanging tree motif. And
wow, that's cool. The big skeleton hand. Yeah, man.
Really fun. So I'll try and put all those up in a single blog post so everyone can look through them and just kind of like ooh and ah over painted minis, which is fun as well. So yeah, Val, you've been a wonder as always. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob. This is my favorite day of the week. You know that.
Perfect. And chat, you've been great too. See everyone soon. Look after yourselves and have a good day.